Hey there Internet, remember me? It's Chef Lethal, and I'm here with a very important episode of Tasty Techniques for you. Now I'm not one to usually go out spouting demands, but I'm going to go ahead and request that you favorite this video right now. Reason being is I'm going to be going over some essential knife skills that are going to come in handy in future episodes. So you can use this episode as a reference point in the future whenever I say something like, I need a diced onion, or julienne of carrot, or something wacko like that. Just come back, it's in your favorites, watch it again, get a refresher if you need it, and we can go on from there. Now, you ever see a recipe that calls for something diced and thought, how the heck am I supposed to do that? Great question, Internet, and I'm here now with the answer for you. Dice basically means cubes, and can be made into any size, small, medium, large, extra large, depending on the item that you're cooking and how you're cooking it, for how long are you cooking it, things like that. Today we're going easy. I've got a peeled onion that I've cut from root to tip, and we're going to do a medium dice on this. It's a nice cheap vegetable, it's delicious, you can use it in pretty much anything, and I've got dinner to cook, so I'm going to use it anyway. Okay, enough talk. Right now I've got my onion half here with the root, the nasty root end facing away from me, and the front obviously facing towards me. And like I said before, a dice is basically a cube, and to make the cube we've got to make a grid. So to start the grid, I'm going to take this onion half here, place it up on its side, or I guess technically the bottom, and I'm going to start making some vertical cuts here down the face of the onion. Now the goal here would be to make these evenly spaced so that you have even cubes, but personally I don't really care because I'm just trying to cook dinner. But the important thing is when you're making these cuts, you don't want to go all the way through. You need this little tiny root here intact. So I've got 3 cuts along the, I guess that's technically horizontal. So I'm going to face that down now, smash, and I'm going to do the same thing but across the onion, completing the grid. And again, in a perfect world, these will all be the exact same size as the cuts that we just made, but I don't care. And, you know, some people do, and if that's you, by all means, go right ahead, be OCD about it. It's all going to get cooked anyway. And you may get this little flurries of onions, but I'll just make it rain over here. So I'm going to scoot those off, and then I'm going to turn the onion to its side, get rid of those guys, and then I'm going to do the final grid cut and just go right down perpendicular of all the cuts that I just made. And you want to make these the same size so that you have nice even sized onion cubes, but as long as they're relatively the same, then who cares? They'll cook about the same speed anyway, and you'll be good to go. This thing I might freeze and use for stock, or chop it up all nice and neat and use it for whatever else I was using this onion for, plop. But our dice is done. Make it rain. Dice. Check. Obviously this doesn't just apply to onions, but I had one and I wanted to show you guys how to do that. In the future, when there's an episode that requires a diced vegetable that's not an onion, I'll show you how to do it then, so that way you'll know exactly how to do it for vegetables that are not an onion. But that's enough dice talk for now. We're moving on to julienne. Perhaps my favorite cut. So I've got the other half of the onion here, and I've got the root end facing away from me. But guess what? I'm going to cut out nasty rootsies like that. So I've got this guy here, it's gross, that goes in the trash. Or your stock pot if you're making stock. So now all of the layers will just pop right out from one another, which is awesome. So now with the former root end facing away from me, I'm going to make vertical cuts once again, but this time all the way through and as thin as you want to. Generally speaking, julienne is a very thin cut used in either caramelization or if you're going to put them raw on a hamburger or in a salad or something, especially with onions. You want these pretty thin, but you can go as thick as you want. Here I'm going kind of medium-ish, I would say. Again, I don't care if you go big, small, if they're not all equal, you know, but ideally they'd all be the same size. So here's an important part. I've got all this onion on my knife. I need to get it out of here. Be gone! So I've got now this kind of stub of an onion piece. It's a little bit too dangerous to keep going the way that I was. So generally speaking, what I will do is just kind of knock it down and just continue the process of slicing through. They're not exactly the same, but it's close enough for me, and that's all that really matters. So I'm going to finish up, and bam, julienne onion. Julienne, check. Now, dicing julienne, that's all fine and good, but for the final cut of today's episode, I'm going to show you how to mince, and I'm about to go ham on some garlic. Okay, so the goal of a mince is to make your cuts as small and tiny teeny as possible. So for this clove of garlic, what I like to do first is to chop it up into rough sort of slices, just to kind of make the process a little bit easier. So I'm just going to cut through that guy again, and cut and leave the nasty root and just kind of throw it away. So now I've got these large chunks. Now the goal again is to make it as small as possible. So there's no real rhyme or reason to this, but I'm just going to make a pile and chop through it and just kind of keep doing that. Now once we really get going here, you're going to want to make your chef knife rock like it's working for tips. But in the meantime, we're just going to kind of make some small little adjustments here, scrape off your blade, and then go for it. So scrape it all, make a little pile, and just kind of chop through. Using garlic, kind of annoying because it sticks to the knife, but I'm just going to keep going. Scrape, chop, 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 scrape, chop, 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 chop. There we go, chop, 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 and then get it off the blade. Be careful when you're doing this. You don't want to cut yourself. Getting finger in your garlic is not usually in many recipes. So chop, 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 chop. Now that right there is what I would call some minced garlic. I've got little pieces. It's a little bigger here and there, but this is good enough for pretty much anything that you're going to do at home. Mincing, check. And that's it. With these 3 knife skills, these are going to take you a long way. And you won't be able to look at a recipe in the future and think, I don't know how to dice, because you do now. So now you'll be dicing and julienning and mincing like a boss. But that's it for today. Please leave a like, comment if you'd like to see me cook anything in the future, and subscribe if you haven't already. It really means a lot to me, so that you can stay tuned for future episodes of Tasty Techniques. I'm Chef Lethal, and I'll see you next time.